And okay, we're now recording. Welcome to this July meeting of the Azure group. That's our YouTube. I apologize for the fact that we don't have a vanity URL, so it's a complex URL, but you can find us on YouTube if you just look for the Nashville Azure group and YouTube. Okay. Let's hang on a second. So those of you who are new to the group, this is a little bit about our group. I'm not going to read it. It's pretty straightforward. It's, we're all about Azure, everything about Azure. We have, this is a forum for open discussion and formal networking among the members. We try to mix things up. We try to have topics at all different levels that would be of interest both to managers and technical people, administrative people, IT people, developers. Like, for instance, next month we have a talk on Kubernetes. So we'll be putting out an announcement on that shortly. We normally meet every third Thursday of the month up at Microsoft. Unfortunately, with the pandemic being what it is, we're no longer, we're not meeting there in person for a while. We do have any intention to resume on-premises meetings, in-person meetings in September if all goes well. I see I have to update the slides. We just went over 1,900 registered members. That happened yesterday, so I haven't had a chance to update it. And of course, we're always looking for, for people that are interested in Azure to join us, both to learn about Azure and also to network with us and, chat so we can, we can have a meaningful discussion. If there are topics you're interested in us covering at future meetings, let us know. I always give preference to people who actually show up at a meeting as far as people who suggest topics. So let us know if you're interested in something. And also, by the way, if you're interested in presenting something, let us know that as well. Quick shout out to our sponsors. We've got several sponsors that have been really good to us over the years. Microsoft, when we meet up at Microsoft, they're our permanent space sponsor, but they also pay our dues for Meetup. So that's a significant amount of money that they pay every year for us to belong to Meetup. So I no longer have to pay for those dues out of my own pocket like I used to do. Vaco is, when we meet on, in person, is our permanent refreshment sponsor. They're also providing our Zoom subscription, which again is an annual cost that they're taking care of for us. My company, Computer Task Group, they're gracious enough to let me take some time out of my work day to run the group, which I appreciate. And we're also sponsored by the Greater Nashville Technology Council. Quick comment here. If your company is interested in co-sponsoring a future meeting in exchange for 5 or 10 minutes to talk about your product or service, get in touch with Roger Dahlman and he'll hook you up with us, okay? This is a slide on our board of directors. I'm the group founder and president, and by day I'm a solutions architect focusing on Microsoft Azure at CTG. Roger Dahlman is a co-founder with me. He started the group with me and vice president, and he's an enterprise architect at Deloitte here in Nashville. Tim Warner, who's a name a lot of you probably know who Tim is. He's a board member, but he's also a Microsoft Azure MVP. He's done a lot of the Pluralsight courses that are out there, and also has written books, and that's his website address there if you want to check him out. Akila Alred is a board member, and she's our director of academic outreach. She deals with the colleges and universities in the area, getting students and college to come and join our group. Matthew Puckett has been our permanent meeting space sponsor for 7 years. He's the one who's arranged for the space when we meet at Microsoft. And he's a principal national cloud solution architect these days. Jack Hagler, again, from Vaco, has been our permanent refreshment sponsor also for 7 years. And he's from Vaco, okay? And with that is our presenter here. I want to find out, first of all, Hemant, are you here? Can you hear me? Can you guys still hear me?
Yes.
Okay. This is the time our presenters should be showing up.
Well, while we wait for my colleague Hemant, I did ping him, so hopefully he'll get back to us shortly. Sorry about that, folks.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Faith. I'm from Elastic. I'm on the community team, so I run user groups just like Bill does, except for Elastic. So we're really excited to be here today. My colleague Randy is here with me as well. And we have a few little goodies that we've brought with us. Our presenter not being one of them at the moment, but we are going to be running a raffle today for some prizes, which include a water bottle and a t-shirt. So we'll be raffling those off to the first 3 people who ask questions. And then we also have a little incentive for folks to stay to the end, which is a $10 Starbucks gift card. My colleague Randy has a form that you'll need to fill out so that we can send you the Starbucks gift card at the end of the presentation. And while we are waiting for Hemant, I do want to mention as well that Elastic maintains our own user groups. We have one in Nashville that's not particularly active. So if you're interested in learning more about Elasticsearch, would love to have you join that user group. And I'll send a link in the chat momentarily. During the pandemic, we've focused on our virtual user group, which has its own little non-Nashville specific group. And we also maintain a YouTube channel, which we update very regularly. So I'll link you guys to that as well. And after I send those links, I will continue to poke Hemant. I think that he might have entered this on his schedule incorrectly. So let me see if I can try to contact him. And so sorry for the delay.
Okay.
I'm here. Sorry about that.
Oh,
Okay,
hi.
welcome. I'm glad you made
Sorry.
it.
For some
That's
reason,
okay.
I thought this starts at 7 your time, and I don't know why. Why did I think that?
We're in central time, right?
Yeah. yeah.
But before we get started, there is one interesting announcement that I wanted to make, and that's that I don't know how many of you have been watching the news lately, but Microsoft just made a fairly significant announcement called Windows 365, which is Windows now that's going to be delivered as software as a service from the web. So something, if you haven't looked at the announcements, you should take a look at that. I think it's a fairly major announcement. It's essentially Windows Virtual Desktop, but as a service. So, and with that, Herman, I'm gonna turn the microphone over to you. Let me make you a co-presenter. Okay. See if I can more. Where are you? Make co-host. How's that? Yes. See if you can share your desktop, and I'll let you take over.
I can. So let me do that.
Beg pardon?
I can. Can you folks hear me all right?
Yes.
I can hear you.
Yeah, we hear you. I don't see your desktop yet.
It's just telling me the other person needs to stop sharing.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's my fault. Okay. Try it again. There you go.
Yeah. Perfect. Yeah. So sorry for the late start. I for some reason I just had it for an hour later than this, which also means there were some last minute things that I was doing. So if this looks a little bit too authentic, it's just because it is my last hour of prep. I just misplanned it. So thank you everyone for joining us today, and thank you to the user group for providing us the opportunity. We wanted to talk through some of the recent announcements we made for Elastic's native integration on Azure, and this is going to be mostly demo heavy, but I just wanted to set a little bit of stage, not make any assumptions about how much people know about Elastic. So I would start with just giving a brief background on what Elastic is, how people tend to use it, and what kind of problems it solves for users on Azure and outside. So Nashville, as I was joking with my colleague, Nashville has been on my bucket list for a while, and it looks like virtually is the only place I can check that off list. I am a little late to this party, so I don't know, Faith and Randy, if you've already gone through your introductions, but this is essentially the team that you have today. Randy, I know, Faith, you were speaking. Randy, have you introduced yourself?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm here in the local area, and I handle enterprise accounts in Tennessee, Mississippi, Alabama, and Georgia.
Perfect. And Faith was already talking about it. She's our community specialist at Elastic. And my name is Hemant. I am one of the solutions architect at Elastic. I'm based out of Seattle area, but I am dedicated to Azure users. So every day when I come to work at Elastic, most of my conversations revolve around Elastic on Azure. So starting with a little bit of brief background, just to make sure and just to get everyone on the same page, you might have heard of the technologies from Elastic, either with the name Elk Stack. Its claim to fame has been the logging analytics, open and free logging analytics tool that's super popular. Elk essentially represented three of the technology components: Elasticsearch, which is the search engine and the distributed search engine and analytics data store, where irrespective of what your use case is, the data gets stored there. Logstash, which has been the L of the elk, that's essentially the piece that you leveraged in your data pipelines to massage your data or to get it or pick it from different data sources and try to give it a structure or maybe enrich it further before it gets into Elasticsearch. And Kibana, that's the end user's window into the Elastic Stack, and that's where I'm going to be spending most of my time today as I go through the demos and talk to you through how once Elastic is deployed on Azure, it can be used for solving multiple problems there. So Elasticsearch in itself, it started around the 2010 timeframe. If you folks are familiar with Apache Lucene, it has been the de facto standard for decades when it comes to creating search engines for applications, for the sites or anywhere else. Elasticsearch is built on top of Apache Lucene, but then obviously it adds a lot of value additions, as you would see through the demos that I will do. DB Engine's ranking, it is the #1 search engine in terms of the open. All these products are developed in the open space. So that means if you go to our repositories on GitHub, not only you can see the code that we develop, you can also interact with the engineers that are producing this. When you go to our site and download the Elastic, essentially you're downloading and operating an open and free stack that you can get started with. Even with all that, the description that I gave, there has always been this feeling. It started as a search engine. It moved on to this Elk fame where people have been using it for log analytics. But there is always that aspect of, since it's an open distribution model, a lot of the times community download it and they start using it. And in my first couple of years, there was always a meeting here and there where somebody would say, oh, I know this is supposed to be used for logging, but see what I'm using it for. And that's where I just wanted to set up some background. If you're coming in to this session with your Elasticsearch or Elk Stack background, I just wanted to give you an overview of what Elastic is or the technology and solutions that we are working on. So when it comes to Elastic technology, we work and invest our times into 3 solution areas, helping people solve their search problems. That search problem could be an application that you're developing for your customers, or it could be a portal, internal portal that you have where you're letting your employees find the information and documents that they need with a lot of efficiency and relevancy. You might pick up the same platform that supports the enterprise search use cases for observability. And this is the logs that are coming from your system, from your applications, network infrastructure, and you're observing them alongside the metrics and application traces that you might be capturing if you're trying to monitor and observe your applications themselves. Security is another very popular use case and solution area that a lot of the community has adopted us, and we followed the lead. So security solutions and things that we provide there is another focus area for us. All these three solutions are powered by the same Elastic Stack. I mentioned earlier Elk Stack, and the reason we moved on to Elastic Stack is over time we introduced this component Beats, as you can see at the bottom of the stack. And that's another lightweight data shipper trying to make it easier for the end users to start to pick up the data and send it over to Elasticsearch. So what this means, if you hear folks from Elastic, we a lot of times just say this thing as, oh, we do 3+1, and 3 essentially here represents 3 solutions that are all powered by same Elastic Stack that's open and free. But there is also other use cases beyond what I'm just showing in the solutions that this stack can be leveraged for. And that's where the true power comes from, is once you have it deployed, there are so many different use cases that you can leverage it for. And in my demonstrations, I would end my demo with the +1 aspect of it, how it can be leveraged for more than just enterprise search, observability, or security. What this translates into being powered by the single platform, search-powered platform, we find many a times our users and customers, they leverage this for multiple teams. So this is just what you're seeing on the screen is just a hypothetical scenario based on how we have seen different users and customers leverage Elastic for different use cases. As you can see, on the top left, as I was mentioning earlier, there is a search use case which solves the problem for the knowledge workers within your companies and employers where you work. They come to work and every day they're looking at documents from OneDrive, SharePoint Online, and many other places, like GitHub issues is another example. So they come in there and they try to find the information that's most relevant to them and be more efficient. That's where they can leverage the enterprise search that's built on top of Elastic Stack. Same way, the SearchCo company also has a product center and a help center that's open to their end customers, and they come to their web properties to find the products or maybe just try to get help from the support, and help center is powered by Elasticsearch as well. Once you translate all this infrastructure for the applications and servers that would be backing all these use cases and customer applications, the security teams and developer operations team can leverage the observability and security solution areas to get that type of data also into Elasticsearch and leverage the same Kibana with the applications that it provide to derive value. So this is essentially what I was referring, the 3+1, 3 solution areas on top of the same Elastic Stack. It essentially translates into multiple teams leveraging the same stack for solving different challenges, while giving them the ability to cross-pollinate and learn from each other as they push the boundaries of Elastic Stack in solving those issues. So I wanted to jump into a demo, and obviously, since this is an Elastic on Azure conversation, I wanted to start with the integration of the native integration that we recently announced into the Azure, and obviously once it's set up, how it can be used for 3 solution areas: enterprise search, observability, and security, leveraging one single Elastic Stack. So I wanted to finish the demo with how you can just treat Elastic Stack, that +1 use case, where you can bring your data and solve your data problems, leveraging the tooling that's provided by the stack. Before I get into it, I am not following the chat. So Randy, I don't know if you and Faith can help me understand if there are any questions.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. And I don't see any questions quite yet. And as a reminder, I will send you Elastic swag if you're one of the first 3 people to ask a question. And yes, Hemant, I will monitor the chat for questions for you.
Oh, thank you. So let me switch over to the demo, and I hope you folks are seeing an Azure portal in my browser. Faith, can you please confirm that?
It looks great.
Perfect. Yeah, so this is the native integration that that we mentioned that we wanted to talk and share with the community. As you can see, Elasticsearch, which is the managed Elastic Cloud offering that's deployed on top of Azure, is a natively integrated service into Azure with this offering. Currently, this is in public preview. It's a marketplace-based integration, but we are actively working to try and take it to GA in coming months. But this is where, if you have a problem, and there are a lot of problems that Elastic Stack can solve, trying to solve it and want to deploy and plug it into your Azure ecosystem, it's as simple as going to your portal today, searching for Elasticsearch, and this will just show up right here due to the native integration. Once you go to this, you would realize that this experience is very similar to as you go ahead and create any other Azure resource into leveraging the Azure portal. I can click on create, just quickly walk you through what that process looks like. So I'm just gonna pick up something that's already there, since I don't want everyone to wait for this deployment to be finished. But Elastic on Azure, you can pick up the region where you want to deploy. We are currently in a few regions for this public preview, but in general, Elastic Cloud on Azure is available in 12 regions. So irrespective of where your workloads are deployed, there is potentially a region that you can co-deploy this with. So this is another aspect of the native integration that we recently announced, because deploying Elastic onto Azure is only the starting point. The next step you would have to do as soon as you deploy it is to start ingesting or start getting the data into Elasticsearch, so you can search, analyze, create alerts, and whatnot. So this integration also enables ability to pick up Azure resource logs and send it into this Elastic deployment that we are just creating right now. I can provide it the tags the way you would do to any other Azure resource, and once it validates my settings, I can go ahead and create it. So this would go ahead and start creating an Elastic deployment in the managed service on Azure. So as I mentioned earlier, I don't think it's worth waiting for this. So I'm just going to pick up one of the deployments that I've already created. So this is where it shows me my Elastic has deployed, what kind of resources it has, the version of Elastic that it's deployed on. But then you would start noticing things like Kibana. So the K of the elk stack, this is where it's surfacing those links. If I need to go ahead and start working with getting the data and whatnot, this is where I can quickly click on this, and this will start opening the Kibana instance. You would also notice the single sign-on is enabled by default. So the Elastic Cloud, the managed service, is leveraging the Azure identity to log in. And I see a Kibana screen here, which hopefully it seems familiar. Now I have deployed Elastic Cloud onto Azure. I can use it for my enterprise search use cases. I can use it for my observability, or I can use it for my security use cases. Before I go there, something else that the integration allows is, if you have any Azure subscription, I'm pretty sure there is a lot of infrastructure, virtual machines that are deployed. You can pick up which specific virtual machines or resources you are trying to ship the logs and metrics from. So this essentially, if you're trying to monitor your infrastructure, or maybe there is a security use case that's asking you to send the logs from machines so you can monitor any suspicious activity. It's as simple as picking up your virtual machines that you want to ship this data from, install the extension. And once this is installed, it would look something like this. In the last column, there is a link. This again takes it back to the Kibana instance. So I can click on this and just show you what that integration and view looks like once you have installed this extension and sending the data to Elastic deployment.
Hey, Hemant, if this is a good place, there are a few questions in the chat. Do you want to finish running through the demo, or do you want to take some of them now?
I would just say let's start taking them as they show up, because otherwise
Sure.
usually the questions suffer at the end.
Okay, yeah. So the one that's most directly related to what you're just talking about is I see the service in your examples started with 480 gigabytes of storage. In your experience, has that been enough for a typical customer / typical use case?
Yeah, so that's our standard, like that's essentially what the average that we have calculated for most use cases, that it's a good starting point. But as I go through the demo, there are ways to understand if that's enough, or if you're looking to maybe downsize it or maybe expand it further. So a good way to show that aspect is obviously I can quickly go to the actual deployment view, because this is a public review and it's still evolving. So right now, when you come here, this is essentially all the resources, that 480 gigs that you saw. This gives you a sense of how much it's in use right now. You can also do things like enabling auto scaling. So if there is a spiky behavior in your workloads, maybe you start at this point and let the auto scaling handle if there are minor spikes, but usually it's a good starting point, and then you can monitor, leveraging the monitoring metrics that we provide to make decisions whether you should downsize it or expand it further.
Okay, awesome. There are a few more. So the first question was a little bit off topic, I think. What are the benefits of ELK versus App Insights usage?
Oh, that's yeah, that's going to be a long one. Is it okay to park it for like once you have seen what it looks like? I think maybe it will be a little easier to point back to the things that I'm showing and answer that in that context.
Totally. Okay. And then the next one is, how do we pick premium disk?
So in this one, what we end up using, and let me actually show. So when you are creating a new deployment, and I'm just showing the cloud version because I wanted to give you a sense of it. So by default, the template that gets picked up, it's the IO optimized. And these are, let me see if they, maybe this might be better. Did we stop showing it? Yeah, we show it here. Yeah, so by default for the IO optimized template that gets picked up, we leverage the LCDs instance types, and these are the ones with ephemeral storage attached to it. And based on how Elastic leverages the compute resources for most use cases, this would work. We deal with the ephemeral nature of the storage with the backup and the clustered nature of Elasticsearch, so you don't end up losing your data. But L32 is what we select for the IO optimized. There are obviously, depending on if you're trying to figure out a different tier for your deployment, this is where the warm tier uses the E series. And that's just based on, so you're just making a trade-off here, which is I'm okay to just let go some of the performance, but I just want to be more efficient with my storage and the compute that I'm using underneath. And that's where we have made the decision to pick up E series. I don't believe they have premium disk attached, but that's essentially, it's probably a longer way to answer the question. But some of those decisions of picking up the right instance types and what makes sense depending on Elastic's usage, we take that decision on behalf of the users.
Got it. Okay, and now there are a few questions that have to do with pricing. Do you want to answer those, or do you want to keep going through the demo and then come back to those ones?
Depending on the question, I mean, I could quickly tell you if it's.
So the first one is, what will be the compute power used by Elastic, and what will it cost in terms of processing so much data for any Azure account with lots of resources?
Oh, could you repeat that? I think I missed the first part of it. Like what's the question on? Is it how much compute would we need?
What will be the compute power used by Elastic, and what will it cost in terms of processing so much data for any Azure account with lots of resources?
Got it. Yeah, so as you would notice here in the sizing, like this is our starting point in terms of, this is what we recommend that you start here. As you can see, you can go down to as little as 1 gig of RAM and 30 gig of storage. So in usual sizing estimate conversations, when users come to us and they ask, hey, this is my use case, how much of this would I need? So one of the factors that play in is obviously your storage requirements and the way it gets calculated depending on the use case. A lot of the time series use cases like logs and metrics, or maybe for security data that you're collecting, that factors into how much data you're collecting every day and for how long you want to keep it. And when you work that math, it arrives on this is how much storage you would need. For search use cases, it's a little tricky because not necessarily your data is changing a lot in terms of you're not adding a lot of more data. You might be revolving around 120 gigs of data, but then you're doing a lot of updates all the time on that data, which essentially translates into compute and RAM overhead on the Elastic deployment. So it gets a little case by case, but hopefully that gives you a sense of how do you arrive on that number of how much storage would you need based on the use case that you have. And if that doesn't answer the question, please just follow up on the chat and I'll try to explain more.
Then there's two more questions. One is, does the price differ between regions? And is it priced per resource monitored?
Yeah, so the price differs just based on how the Azure pricing is slightly different depending on which region you're going from. West US and East US, I've not seen a lot of difference, or maybe it's exactly the same. But once you start going to a region, just giving an example, like if you go to a Canadian region, we don't have this service yet, but just looking at the compute itself, like the price difference is quite significant. So if you're picking regions and they have significant price difference at the Azure tier level, just expect a similar delta when you pick up the service for that region. And Faith, I missed the second part of it. I know that it was a two-part question.
The second part is it priced per resource monitored?
It's not. So it is essentially priced based on what you're seeing on the screen, the RAM and the storage that you would need. Whether 240 gigs of storage means if you're monitoring or observing 1,000 devices, or if you're just doing 10, that's essentially what it's priced on. So this gives flexibility to users in terms of you can play with your retention, and you get all the data in, and then you can decide whether you want to keep that data or not. And as long as you're within the storage, obviously, there is no price impact of how many devices you end up monitoring. Sorry, Randy, was there something that you wanted to?
No, I just posted a link to our online pricing calculator for our Elasticsearch service. So that'll give you at least an idea of how we go about, as you kind of fill in the blanks there, it'll give you an idea of what the charges are.
Yeah, and there is a lot of flexibility just based on the tiering that you're seeing here. Like you can go to the tier for something like frozen tier, where we just start leveraging the Azure blob storage to give users flexibility and cost optimizations. So this tiering is essentially aimed to help users be more creative and more flexible with how they want to leverage this while still keeping the costs in check. Cool. Faith, is there any other question?
Oh, yep. One more just snuck in. What does a migration path look like from a self-hosted Kubernetes deployment of the Elk stack to the Azure hosted version? And then in parentheses, is it easy or self-paced, or is there a tool you guys have that allows for easy transition?
Yeah, so we don't necessarily have a tool where you can convert a self-managed on Kubernetes or even otherwise into an Elastic Cloud deployment. What we do have is documentation guidelines on what that process would look like. And a lot of the time, what plays into those scenarios is when you're coming over and switching over to a managed service, is your decision more driven by every month my data becomes stale and useless, and maybe I pick up a time where I just move everything over, let's say starting in August, to a managed service deployment? And for a use case like that, you just end up pointing your, whatever was sending the data to your self-managed Kubernetes-based Elastic deployment, it can start pointing it to the managed service. For use cases where you do need to also migrate the data along with it, that's where we recommend the snapshot and restore APIs that you can leverage to get your data to a point where it can be restored directly into the managed service. And that way you minimize the time it would take otherwise for you to ship the data over.
He says, perfect, thanks.
Cool. And would that be all, Faith?
Yes, I think that we've reached the end of the questions. And also we have fulfilled our swag incentive for question asking as well, which doesn't mean you shouldn't ask more questions. I just wanted to make that clear. It was only the first 3 people.
Perfect, thank you. Yeah, so just coming back and finishing on the native integration and what it works. Like I said, currently it is in public preview, and we are aiming for next few months to take it to generally available. But if you're using Azure and you have in portal, you should be able to see the way I saw it when I searched for it, and you can try it out. So let me move on to, once you have this set up, now there is an Elastic deployment on Azure. Now I just wanted to get into the different ways you can leverage Elastic for those different solution areas: enterprise search, observability, and security. And I just wanted to go through those. So I would start with, just getting into the roots of the search, right, where it all started. So I'm pretty sure this is Yelp.com is a common website. Either you go on your browsers, and I'm pretty sure I have Yelp on my phone and use it all the time. But if you start looking at, like, just to put in context what a search experience looks like, this gets, ooh, did I break Yelp? So I'm looking for restaurants, and as you would notice, like Yelp's experience, it goes a lot more than just searching for text and returning the data back, right? So by default, I'm pretty sure there are multiple factors that they take in on what to show me. And you can see the geospatial aspect of it is an important piece to the search. If I were doing this on my phone, I'm pretty sure they will pick up my location and try to help me understand where all the restaurants are located based on my position. So that's the geospatial aspect of search that goes beyond just the text search. You would notice on the left-hand side, there are multiple filters where you can pick up based on how pricey a restaurant is. There are different categories, features, neighborhoods. Like, you can see that the search experience in itself is a lot more complicated than just finding some text and returning it back. You can create meaningful and delightful search experiences for your end users, and sometimes that will define whether I use Yelp or if I use something else. So once we have this context set up, Yelp actually leverages Elasticsearch to provide the search experience. And I just wanted to give everyone a sense of the kind of search experiences that you can create leveraging Elasticsearch. And Yelp is just a good example of regular text searching, a lot of filters, a lot of facets that they are providing, and then also the geospatial aspect of the search too. So they leverage Elasticsearch for creating this experience. This is where I will jump into an equivalent demo system that we have to just give you more insights into that search experience and how, as a creator of that search experience, you can manage it. So this is where it will get a little choppy because I did not have everything open already. So please bear with me. So once you have like how we deployed Elasticsearch and leveraging it for enterprise search use case, the use case here is very similar to Yelp, where as a business or as a developer, you have created a search experience for your end users who come into the site, which is what we are looking at, Food Finder, and look for things like sushi. And this is where, as a developer and as a consumer of search, there are a lot of default expectations we have now, because whether we realize it or not, we end up searching a lot of the day, whether it's at work or for personal reasons. So that's where things like, as I started typing in, it's giving me auto suggestions, it's highlighting what I'm searching for. So some of these things we just tend to take for granted. And with the solution that was deployed, a lot of this is just out of the box. What's also out of the box is if I end up creating, let's say, the Haru Sushi is the place that I want to go, and I end up clicking it, there is an API, click-through API, that we will take a look at after this, that gives me as a developer a way to understand when someone searched for sushi and the content I provided, did they even find it useful? And click-through is a great way to understand that part, that somebody actually ended up clicking on something that they found. Let's try one more thing, which is just looking at Tavern. For whatever reason, I am traveling to the States, and I just thought, Tavern is a good way to find beer around me. But based on the search experience that has been provided, obviously Tavern returns 0 results, given, it's just not a recognized keyword. None of the restaurants have the word in New York Tavern in them, in this data set at least. And that's why I'm not seeing any results. So on the other hand, there is, so I'm opening a side-by-side view of the developer or the person who's responsible for creating that search experience. So this is the end user's view, how they're searching and interacting with the data and searching for restaurants. Then there is the creator's view, which is, it starts with something as create a search engine. So if I'm taking a step back in the application that I just showed, so the developer started somewhere here, and they said, food database, that's what my search engine name is. They can pick up which language would this engine has the content for. So when you're creating multilingual search experiences, depending on where you work and what you work on, a lot of the times this is where you end up spending time just making sure that search experience is relevant and good, whether someone is searching in English or if they're searching in Spanish, based on the application, the capabilities that it provides. So I would just let it be universal and create my engine here. And this just marks the beginning of, now I can go ahead and start getting the data into this engine. And then in my application, whether it's a mobile application or web application, I can use the APIs to connect to the search engine. There are multiple ways to get data into this. I can use a web crawler. As you see, it's currently in beta, but this essentially, if you give it a domain, it would start crawling it, and you will have a search engine that has the content from that domain or multiple domains, that then you can put it back into the search application to provide that search box at the top. You can obviously paste a simple JSON, test JSON, or upload a JSON file. In most realistic use cases, you would be indexing your data with the APIs. Given that, for a search use case, you always end up updating the documents or keep adding new content, so people keep finding what they're looking for. So this is a new engine, so I would not have anything interesting in the analytics. So let me go back to the other engine where the application I showed you has already been in use and people have been searching on it. So this is my overview in that case. So what here I'm getting as a developer of the search experience, what has been the interaction from my users with my search experience that I created, right? So it's telling me there have been 6,000 queries on your application, total documents are 819, total clicks are about 4,000. So as a developer, this gives me even at this level, at the overview level, this gives me a good sense of the delta. People ended up searching 6,000 times, but they only clicked 4,000. So it gives me some sense that, how I'm doing over the content or maybe the user satisfaction. I can get into further details, and the details could be just looking at analytics, what people have been searching for. So the top queries, and this is a lot of the information that gets captured by default. So there is no code that has gone into it. Once I created an engine here, use it in my application, the APIs would start capturing a lot of this by default. So this is telling me the top queries are tavern. A lot of people are looking for it, but they end up clicking on nothing, which is a clear source of trouble for me as a developer. I want to fix this because in United States, a lot of pubs and bars would satisfy the needs of a customer who's looking for a tavern. So I'll come to it, how this can get fixed. There is another piece that's super important to me, which is top queries with no results. And this is, again, a big red flag for me as a developer. I want to make sure that people are finding what they're looking for. So one conclusion for something like tavern could be, I have the data, like pubs and bars. There are a lot of restaurants with those names. I just need to figure a way out so anyone who's looking for tavern can still get to the data. So I solved that by a synonym, creating a synonym, and I'll show that. The another reasons could be they might be looking for something like Caribbean, and maybe there is no restaurant, or maybe I don't have the data on, there might be a lot of Caribbean restaurants around, and maybe I need to just update my data so users can find it. So let's go to that. And another thing that as a developer, I want to make sure that whatever I'm doing here is actually reflecting those. I can go to query tester and try to do the same thing that I did in application. A lot of people are searching for tavern, and obviously yeah, so there is no content found here for the tavern, and this gives me a starting point. I can quickly go to synonyms, create a synonym set, and just say anyone who's looking for tavern, they probably are looking for pubs. So once I do this, I can again go back to I can again go back to the query tester. Actually, it gives me a handy link right here. So I can search for pub just to make sure I gave it a good synonym, and I can find information on pub. And if I do tavern, it looks like it's giving me back information, just not the, it's still not the perfect, like it's still not giving me everything that I was hoping it would, because for pubs, it gave me things that had names in the pub or the pub. So I can continue to work on this. And the way I could do this is going into my relevance tuning. And I could do the same thing here. So I can search for tavern and just see that the results are good, but it's not necessarily very, very handy for me. So I saw in my result set, a lot of the restaurants had the name pubs in them, and that's what I want to boost here. So I can assign it more weight just to see if that starts helping. And you would notice on the right-hand side, it has already started changing the results. Like Woodrow's was the first result, and now there is a pub that's in the name. If I continue to do this, this is where I can just try and play with the queries and the changes I'm making, and how that's reflecting in the user's experience. So we added a tavern in here. Let's go back and see if the end user's experience has changed here or not. So you would notice that it has started giving me some results. It's still not the best, and that's where I can go back and continue to play with my relevance tuning and other controls that are provided in the enterprise search. And just based on the time that we have, I don't think I would be able to get into everything, but this is just to give you a sense of how the enterprise search solution that's built on top of the Elasticsearch can be leveraged to create the experience that we saw in the Food Finder app. And also as a developer or creator of that search experience, how you can keep a tab on it and keep improving your search experience. So before I switch systems, Faith, are there any questions on what I covered so far?
Yes. So there's one that Randy answered, which is for a different user experience, can we configure A/B testing like we do in Akamai/CDN
Randy says, yes, you can. And then the next question is, how would you triage a long time execution query? As a developer, where would you go to look for the issue? Or in other words, how can you speed up the indexing on a heavy or large query?
Yeah, so some of like getting into those details of how much a query is taking and how you can improve that, that's where you would start getting into more of the deeper level analytics of the Elasticsearch itself. And there are ways to do it that hopefully if I have time, I would go through that flow too on how you can monitor the Elasticsearch itself. And it shows you the times that your searches are taking, the time your indexing is taking. And accordingly, you can also see along with it is the resources, because sometimes it's a hardware bottleneck that's causing it. And a lot of times it's just the data mapping that might be causing an issue, which triggers another architecture review of your setup itself. But there are ways to do it. It's just that it's not in part of this admin UI that we have. So Faith, if you can please remind me, I would want to go through that flow too.
Will do.
Any other question?
That's it for now.
Perfect. So if you remember when I was talking about the different problems within the search space that you can solve, another very popular problem is around the workplace search, which is trying to help the employees that work at your employer, or maybe if you're a consulting firm, you're trying to solve it for someone, to give them the centralized search experience across their content sources. So let me launch those pieces. Can. So right now I am in the similar view that you saw for the admin or a developer who was creating a search experience in an external application, or maybe an internal web application or a mobile application. There is an equivalent of an administrator view for someone who's responsible for creating this unified search experience for your teammates or different teams leveraging Elastic. So the starting point for something like could be, you might have different content sources that you want to connect. And for this demo environment, these are some of the content sources that have already been connected to this deployment. And that's what the search experience would be based on. But just to give you a sense of, there are multiple out-of-the-box connectors that are available. OneDrive, SharePoint Online are some of the ones, or even GitHub, that are pretty common for an Azure ecosystem. A lot of time, Confluence, Wikis, and Jira also show up. But this is where you can pick up, if you have a GitHub Enterprise server, I'm just making it up. This will guide you through how you can connect your GitHub Enterprise server to this deployment of workplace search. And what it starts doing is every 2 hours, it will sync the content from GitHub. So, folks can come back here and search it. Something else that I do as an administrator is to make sure the different teams that I have within my workplace, they have a tailored experience. So for example, legal usually has nothing to do with GitHub. So that's why in the content sources for users in the legal group, they don't have a GitHub. For product engineering, GitHub is a very, very common one. And that's why I have that in here. What I can also do is not just connect the specific content sources for a specific team. I can also manage the prioritization for them. So what this means is engineering team has created a request for me that, hey, when you provide the results back from Confluence, OneDrive, GitHub, and Google Drive, can you make sure that the results that are coming from wikis and GitHub are prioritized higher than what we are getting back from OneDrive? And this is where, as an administrator, I can easily come in and just boost the results from GitHub. So when users in this product engineering group are searching for the content, even though the content sources are the same, the results from GitHub would be shown much higher. So I showed the content sources that are in here, but if you have a custom or legacy source that we have not yet provided a connector, and by the way, we are providing connector with every release and trying to add more and more, you can always add a custom API source that would let you connect your custom, whether it's a file share or a file system, and be able to fetch the data from those sources and provide it in the search experience for your teammates or the end users. There is also an out-of-the-box search application that I would just quickly go to. And this is the view of an end user, not the administrator who created this experience. But as you can see, the look and feel and experience of this is very contemporary. And again, like I said, we are all searching all the time. So we have a very good sense of what a good search experience looks like. And this is just doing the regular things that we would want to see as recent activity, what different content has been added to the content sources. These are the different content sources that are providing me the results. And I'm just using the same user. That's why I'm seeing all of this. An actual developer would have only seen the content sources that were provided for that group. So when I start searching here, it depends very week to week, as depending on what I'm working on. So someone in marketing, as an example, is looking for marketing PDFs, and that's what I end up searching. Once it finishes searching, you would notice that my results are provided here, and there are multiple content sources, but it's doing a unified relevancy. So the top result based on the ranking is from Dropbox, then it goes to SharePoint, and then again, it goes back to Dropbox. So this experience is not just a federated search experience across multiple content sources. The end users are getting a unified relevancy irrespective of where the content is coming from. You would also notice that it detected the PDFs as a keyword within my query, and that's another smart keyword detection that the workplace search tries to do within the solution. Is it tries to pick up what people are searching for. And as you can see in the default filters, it has already filtered based on the PDF. So it's just helping me as a user to get to what I need as soon as I can, leveraging this PDF smart keyword detection. I can click on one of them, and on the right-hand side, it just shows me a brief overview of what that document is. And a lot of the times, this is good enough for me to know if I really need to go to Dropbox to check this document, or maybe there is another place that this document exists and I need to look in the SharePoint. So this is one experience based on the smart keyword detection. It can also do things such as documents updated by a specific user. And this is super helpful when I'm collaborating with someone like Randy at work. I can always come in and search for these documents that we have been collaborating on. So it's just another way to find the same information rather than depending on the content in the document itself. So if I search for this, a lot of the documents that would show up, you would notice that they have been created by this user, and it has detected those keywords as well. Just the last one on this one, since GitHub is a resource too, so I can search for things like open pull requests, and you would notice just based on what keywords I'm using, it is trying to do that smart detection for me. And it says, oh, I see a pull request, I see an open. Chances are this user is looking for GitHub, type pull request and status open. So it's just trying to detect the keywords and trying to find the intent of the user and just help them get to the information and be more efficient. So this just quickly gives a quick overview of the enterprise search and the different problems that users typically solve with it. So I showed an example of external search application like a food finder or maybe something else that you develop for your customers or users, and something like this, which is totally geared towards the teams you work with or different employees at your employer. Faith, I would be moving into the observability space. I just wanted to check if there are any questions.
There are. So the first question is, where is ADO, and is there an integration to Azure Devops?
So within this one, there is not, like the Azure Devops integration is not yet there. As I said, you can leverage a custom API resource, but we are also producing a lot of connectors by default with every release. So being dedicated to Azure, like that's one of my charter, is to make sure things like Office 365, Exchange Server, those things make their way into the default connectors. It's just that it's part of the roadmap based as of today.
Is there any ETA for that?
Nothing that I can share in terms of what the timeline looks like, but maybe Randy, if you can help follow up, I can connect with you and then we can follow up.
Okay.
There's another question. Does custom sources support REST endpoints?
Yes, it does.
Cool. Those are all the questions that I've seen up to this point. So I think we're good to move into observability.
Thank you. So let me clear this a little bit. So I'm just starting with like we have cooked up this demo, but I just wanted to show end to end what that experience could look like. And there is a Teams connector as well, by the way, for these notifications. It's just that this demo was done before we had that connector. So what you're seeing here is a Slack notification, which is sharing with someone who cares about monitoring an application. We are getting into the observability piece right now. So looking at logs, metrics, and application traces to understand how things have been in your application. So this is representative of a lot of the modern architectures around the microservices-based application. This is a Kubernetes-based application that Elastic is monitoring. It has multiple components. As you can see, there is traditional databases in the back. There is an Elasticsearch for search experience. There is also a Redis and just multiple services developed in different languages, which is more the reality of a microservices-based application. You see different components that are deployed from the Elastic. So FileBeat is a lightweight data shipper that focuses on data that exists in the logs. And it's just picking up the logs from application, from servers, and sending into Elasticsearch. Metric beat is another lightweight data shipper. If you remember the beat from the stack diagram, that's essentially, these are different types of them. And it picks up metrics from the Kubernetes, how the Docker containers are doing, how the pods are doing. APM, application performance monitoring. This focuses on how my code itself was doing and sending it into Elasticsearch. So there was a question earlier on the application insights versus ELK. And for that specific conversation, this is where we are trying to unify the data store and your workflow that's built on top of Elasticsearch, leveraging Kibana. Because when you're monitoring your applications, you're looking for different signals from different sources. So you're looking for things from logs, you're looking for things from your infrastructure itself, and then also how your code itself is doing. So all that data gets shipped into Elasticsearch, and the end users are working through the Kibana to look at that data and correlate that data. So as I go through the demo, I would try to keep highlighting the end user experience, how you're looking at one type of data, and then you can quickly jump into different with the same goal at the end of the day. You're trying to make sure that if there are any issues within the application infrastructure setup, you are getting ahead of them and solving and keeping your mean time to resolution as low as possible. So once this is all set up, the data is collected, there is anomaly detection that's part of the Elastic Stack. And if I have time, I would try to cover the machine learning aspect in the end section of how to leverage Stack, just to show that. This specific one, this is an out-of-the-box machine learning job that looks at response times. And whenever it finds any deviation, any anomalies, it's highlighting me through an alert. In this case, it came to a Slack, but it can also go to a Teams, leveraging the Teams connector. So once I click on this, this is giving me a link to the Kibana with a service map. So again, if you have leveraged App Insights, this is a very similar view of looking at your microservices-based application looking at end-to-end how things have been. You would notice the Edward service, which is a Java-based service, has these red circles around it. And that's just the color codification to let the operators or DevOps people know that, hey, in your application, this service seems to be the one that's most stressed out. Since I came from an alert, I know there was some deviation or abnormality noticed in the response time. And that's why I get the view that I'm getting. Once I click on it, this is where it's giving me more information. So it seems like there was an anomaly detected based on the default machine learning. That's part of the Elastic. So I can do a couple of things. I can go to service details, or I can just go to the anomaly itself. So let's go to the anomalies from here. So I'm still in Kibana. It's just linking it to another place within Kibana to show me further details on what abnormal did it detect. So as you can notice, this is just showing me over time, this is where the response time is for Edward service application, but it deviates here and there. So depending on how much it's deviating, sometimes it gets flagged as yellow, which is, it's slightly abnormal, but 25 score tells me, depending on how critical this application is, I may not end up alerting someone on it. Once it gets to like highly abnormal, the red color is just telling me the 92 anomaly score, and I can start digging deeper into why exactly was this highlighted as an anomaly score. And this is telling me in the hover that the actual response time is usually this. The upper bounds and lower bounds that it has learned over time are much less. And that's why, because it deviated so much, that's why you have assigned it a score of 92. And based on that, you want to take an action. So same thing that I just talked about, you can get into the details, and it just talks about the math behind it, why it flagged this as an anomaly. What I can also do from here, I can change the view. So right now I'm just looking at the anomaly, the response time itself, but now I want to understand a little bit more, get into the details of it. So this is another view to look at the same thing, but it's telling me this time where the anomalies are happening. And on the left-hand side, influencers are essentially who to blame for. And this is being captured in the data that APM agent for Java has picked up. If I select the specific one, or maybe just go to one of these, I clicked on it, it's giving me on the left-hand side that the request transaction on Edward service is the one that caused this anomaly, and that's why I assigned it a score. It's not part of the demo flow here, but I can also, just plug my dashboards and more reporting that I've built around this. So my investigator can continue to investigate this further and understand why exactly the anomaly has happened. Let me just go back to this view that we were in. And I can go to the service details. So this is where it picks up the Edward service, and this is just trying to give me everything that it can around that service and the different transactions that have been happening during that window where that anomaly was detected. So I can see there are a couple of annotations by default, and the annotation here is usually a sign of there was a new version that was announced. As you can see in the hover, it was 1.8 at this point. And then at this point, it was reverted back to 1.72. And this is just based on, there might be some issues that were noticed during this and why the version was reverted back. I can go to the correlations here just to understand a little bit further. And correlations is just a way for me to understand, and I can pick up the threshold I want, but it's just giving me a sense of, based on the different data it's collecting about the service, what could have possibly caused this. And as you can see, by default, it has picked up the service version. And this is just giving me a sense of 96% of the slow transactions when the response time was abnormal happened because of the service version 1.80. So this is a correlation between slow transactions and the version. So someone looked at it, and that's why they reverted it back to the last version 1.7.2, because there was enough data in the traces that told me that it could potentially be the version that caused it. You can add multiple fields here, like anything that's part of the data, you can add them, and that helps you correlate with different aspects of the information that you've collected. I can also go down and there is a specific transaction that has been slow during this time. And if I click on it, it just drills down into the transaction itself. It's telling me here the different language components or different microservices that this service interacted with. And it's just saying, it started here and then it did a custom code. It went to Elasticsearch. That's what you're seeing at the top, like the different systems it's interacting with. If I click on the Elasticsearch, it's giving me the query that it created. This is just to help me understand if I'm seeing a slow response time in my application or a specific transaction, this helps me just get to the bottom of it, that whether it was my code itself or whether it was interacting with a third-party system or another system that could have resulted in that time. So as you can see, the 106 milliseconds that this took, why it was flagged as an anomaly, 104 milliseconds out of that was spent with an Elasticsearch. So the chances are maybe something was going on with Elasticsearch during that time. There was, just going back to the comparison between the App Insights and Elk Stack. Obviously, App Insights is very well integrated into the Azure ecosystem. And when you're doing things, whether in app services and other places, it definitely has a lot of value on how it's just there. Here, I'm just trying to highlight because Elasticsearch is acting as that unified store, and you can collect logs, metrics, and APM, and anything else as well. It just gives you this ability of, hey, I looked at my application traces. It's still not enough for me to conclude whether it was my code or my infrastructure. So this is where I can pick up, maybe I want to go to the logs that Elasticsearch also captured during that time, or maybe the metrics. If there was indeed an issue here with my code, there is an ability to create a link, and this could be a GitHub issue that you just open from here directly. But let's quickly just take a look at the pod logs, and then I will move over just because we are just to be cognizant of the time. So this is, as you can see, it knows from my code, like which specific pod was the one that was sending the logs during that time. It has brought over the context of when it saw the response time deteriorate. And this is where I can just try to understand if there are specific things within my data set that could be worth looking for. I can try to highlight those in my logs, and chances are probably there is nothing that says error here. But if it were, it could find things as the logs are being screamed. So I'm just picking up something that I know exists. As you can see, info is not the best term to look for, but using that search experience, this being a search-powered platform, there are multiple ways to get to the information, not just dependent on the dashboards and visualizations. Any questions, Faith? I know I've been going on for a while.
No, I don't think that there are any right now.
Perfect. So something else, and this is all, I have not touched any customized visualization or dashboard yet, but just to show you more around, just the default that we are trying to provide and make it more of a turnkey solution. If you remember the 3 solutions powered by the same stack, like all this work that you're seeing out of the box is because of that effort into making it more of a solution. So this is, I am into my logs application, and this is where it's just showing me, based on the logs that it has been collecting, what kind of anomalies have been happening in just purely at the rate of the logs that I'm receiving. So the data that Elasticsearch is capturing, I can enable this anomaly or this machine learning job. It's already enabled, but if this was a fresh system, I could have quickly turned it on. It would start looking at the different logs that it's receiving and create baselines for them. So that's essentially what you're seeing here, the data set and the baselines it has. It's telling me here the highest anomaly or highest abnormal thing was located in the currency service.log. And this is just its way of giving me a sense of that, the received request type is looking crazy high for some reason. Usually it's not that high, and that's why this is an anomaly. And you should probably, investigate this further. I know I've been moving around in Kibana quite a bit, but I just wanted to take a pause, show you, on the left-hand side, this is where, depending on what kind of data you're storing in Elasticsearch. Kibana provides you that workflow experience as a user. Like if you're collecting observability data like logs, metrics, and APM, it just has those workflows built into it, so people can be more efficient and look at it. So observability, if my starting point was not the alert and more of, hey, I'm just getting into this and I want to see how my system is doing, this is the overall view of what my logs look like, what my metrics look like, the APM traces, and the uptime data that I'm collecting. So as someone who's responsible for keeping the mean time to resolution low, this is a super handy place to start, because just by quickly glancing at it, sometimes you can tell that, hey, maybe I should dig more into the logs themselves. And this is what it is, log rates per minute. But then I can start getting into the details of it. So uptime is another piece that is part of this. And this is just monitoring the different API endpoints I might have, and I just configure them here. So Elastic can just monitor them for me. And if there is something that deviates from the behavior, it's going to just let me know how it has been doing. It's looked like during this specific time window, there was one of the services that was down, and it seems like it was the Edwards service green, which is making a sense because in Edwards service is where I found that issue with the response time. If I click on this, this is just giving me further details of that endpoint. So this is the endpoint that I'm monitoring. It's telling me over time, this is just looking at the duration, how much time it takes to respond, or the response time. Around here is where the response time went a little bit crazy, and that probably is the reason why there was an anomaly detected. If the anomaly was, if the machine learning job was not configured, it's as easy as enabling the anomaly detection from here, and it would start noticing the behavior of this URL or this service. And whenever it deviates from the behavior, it could create a similar alert and notify you in Teams or Slack or any other system that you're using. So this was just a quick overview of the different components of the observability. Just to summarize, I'm still using the same Elasticsearch that I used for the enterprise search data, where I had the food database. Now that I'm collecting logs, metrics, and application traces from my application services and infrastructure, it gives me this easy ability to observe and notify and machine learn from. So this concludes the observability piece that I wanted to show, leveraging the same Elastic deployment that was deployed on Azure for a different problem. Faith, if there are still no questions, I could quickly jump into the security.
I don't see any questions right now.
Thank you. So I'm just opening another system that has more security focused data. So I could start from it just to give you a sense, like at this point, I'm still in Kibana. I'm still leveraging one of the applications. It's just that my data set, the data that I'm collecting into Elasticsearch is different, but that enables a security team to leverage the same platform and interact it with the same way how I was interacting with observability. So in this one, this is the security application within Kibana. This is giving me a centralized place for looking at different kind of alerts that have been happening, what kind of events I'm capturing, and this is just showing the different event sources essentially. Most of them are coming from the endpoint agent that has been deployed onto these systems. On the left-hand side, this is where we try to surface all the relevant information related to security, and Elastic solution on security could be helpful for you. The more interesting thing is the detections that have happened. And detections is essentially, there are 300 plus out of the box rules that you could enable based on what data you're collecting. And whenever it detects something in those rules gets fired, it essentially turns into a detection. Hey, something was detected, and that's what you're seeing here. So in this one, I see there was a specific time frame where a lot of detections rules were met. And if I can keep going down, I would want to start with the severity, and anything that's critical, that's my starting point. And it seems like there was a malware detection alert rule that was triggered. I click on, so there is an analyze event here in this view. And if I click on that, this is just giving me a further sense of what exactly happened with that event and why it was flagged as an alert. So essentially what happened, that somebody opened Word, Microsoft Word, and it started a process update exe, which is so far so good. Like, this is common. Sometimes it updates itself. But once it started, then it just forked itself into these three processes, which to me don't make any sense. Like I've never seen Office or Word do that before. And that's why this was flagged as an alert and detected and shown to the end user. In reality, this would have been a notification to the Teams or Slack and maybe something like ServiceNow, where you're monitoring your tickets, or Jira system. But this just gives you a view. This gives you a quick view into how someone who's using Elastic for security, what their day-to-day could look like. And obviously there is a lot that I have not covered, but this just gives you a quick sense of leveraging the same platform. Just because now you're collecting logs from your systems or Windows events you're collecting, it could let you analyze that data and notify and work with it, leveraging the same stack and same platform. Any questions on the security, Faith?
Yes, so not related to security, but is there any performance degradation over time while data grows, or there are updates of existing data?
Yeah, so I think I'm pretty sure, irrespective of how you estimate your elastic size when you're beginning with, at some point you would get to a point where it's complaining about the resources. It's just that with the monitoring pieces that are built into it, you can avoid that upfront, and it can let you know that, hey, you're getting to a point where either you might want to apply those data tiering that we saw earlier. You want to move the data to slower hardware, or cheaper, maybe blob storage itself. So you have the data, but then it's not taxing you on the performance of the system itself. That could be a good segue into, hopefully, if it's enabled here, because I know it's not enabled here.
There is one security question as well.
Yeah.
Are there rules or rule sets that conform to specific standards? For instance, an InfoSec standard, an ISO standard, an audit standard, etc.
Indeed, they do. So let me go into it. The manage, or the rules that are here and enabled, they are actually now 460. For some reason, I thought they were in 300s. So these are the pre-built rules. And if you go to any one of them that has actually worked, you would notice that this is where it's giving an analyst more information about what this rule itself means and what standards it conform to. So we do conform to the MITRE ATT&CK framework, and that's where a lot of the rules that we keep coming up with are based on the MITRE ATT&CK framework. If I go to this specific one, I'm not sure, since it's a machine learning job, but it will give you details on why this is flagged as something, and what specific attack pattern in the MITRE ATT&CK framework it recognizes. That's why we have let you know that this could be an issue. But MITRE ATT&CK framework plus our own rules is usually what we adhere to. I hope that answers the question. If it doesn't, please feel free to drop in as a follow-up.
He says, thanks.
Cool. If there are no more questions, I probably would just switch into that +1, because honestly, that's more fun for me, since I have done these demos before.
No more questions so far.
Perfect. So let me. Yeah, so this is the deployment that I created, and this is more of a vanilla one than the demo systems that I was using. So let me quickly go to the Kibana in this instance, and I just wanted to highlight, how you can leverage it, not just be confined by the three type of solutions that I showed you. Like if you have a different data problem, it is a pretty flexible data platform, aka why it is so popular among the open source and open community, because once you have it in your hands, the possibilities are almost limitless on how you can play with it, given its developer first approach and an open platform. So giving you just a sense of, I showed you systems that have already been built and you have already ingested the data, but a lot of the times that will not be your starting point unless you're adopting a system from someone who has already done that for you. So this is where you can come in within Kibana, and it will also guide you how to start getting that data. So for example, if you're interested in Azure logs, this will guide you as a wizard the steps you need to take to start getting those logs into Elasticsearch. And once it's done, you can go back. There are also dashboards out of the box that are available that can let you look at the data and activity that has been happening within Azure. And I did not get into it, but the native integration makes all this much easier. If I am leveraging a deployment with the native integration, this piece is covered. You won't need to do any of this. I'm just giving you an example of how to leverage Kibana as your starting point to understand how you can capture this data that's of interest to you. Something else that Kibana gets shipped with, and again, if you're new to this system, this is where it gives you a way to just familiarize yourself. So there is a e-commerce orders as an example. The data that has been ingested, it has some of the components associated with it, like visualizations and how the data can be looked at and presented leveraging the Kibana. So let me open these two just to give you a sense of the art of the possible with the visualizations. So we are looking at a dashboard, and this is just looking at the sample data set that's part of Kibana to give you a sense of how different ways you can visualize and present that data. What I can also do here is this Elasticsearch being a search platform first. This is where it starts helping out a lot, because you don't necessarily have to arrive to this with questions already defined or queries already defined. You can always change it on the fly. So for example, if I'm curious about currency, it will help me build this query. So I don't even need to know how to query the system and the data in Elastic. Once I do this and update it, this will just give me information, and it seems like everything is euro in this data set, so it's not going to change much. What I can do here is, though, if I take that out, I can look at these orders, and it seems like male and female, there is a data point within my data which categorizes an order as male or female. So I can click on one of them, and it would just drill down onto the whole dashboard, even me having to type anything. But you notice it has added a filter up here. So I can do a lot of things. I can exclude the results. I can disable it. You can create multiple filters and just interact with the data as you usually do on a daily basis. So the saved search queries and saved filters is super helpful in that sense. So this is a very traditional view of how the visualizations, how you visualize the data and work with it. Kibana also has this ability to let you be creative with what we call as canvas. And as the name suggests, it lets you start from an empty canvas, so to speak. And then you can add your images, your logos, and everything. As you can see here, if I did not show you with the Kibana around it, it's very hard to tell that it's part of Kibana, because the look and feel of this while having the live data on it is very customized to someone who wants to present this information in a specific way. So this is with the sample data set. Where it gets further interesting is I can also work with my own data. So I'm going into the machine learning. There is a data visualizer here, and this just uses machine learning in the background. But what I can do with this, I might have a sample data set that I want to onboard. One of the data sets that I downloaded earlier is, where did it go? Yeah, art in public places. So this is a Nashville specific data set that's highlighting the map for the public places where art is displayed. So if I were attending in real time, I could have leveraged this, but I imported the CSV, and you would notice leveraging the machine learning, it's just giving me, some details around how the data is. It's telling me the different field names that it has. I can go ahead and import this. I can do a double check just to make sure that it's picking up all the data points correctly. And it looks like it is. I don't need to change anything here. I'll just go ahead and import this data set. So this data set is import. I already had something with that name when I was trying. Hopefully this goes through. Yep, this went through. So I can start looking at this data in the Discover, which loosely speaking, I mean, I usually explain it as this is my Excel equivalent of Kibana. This is where I can check the different column names, what the data looks like, and whatnot. As you can see, the CSV had some location related data since it's a map type data, and Elasticsearch has picked it up as a geospatial. So remember the Yelp use case that I showed? That's because Elasticsearch is also a geospatial database. You can provide it different kinds of geolocation-based data set, and it knows how to work with it. So let's import another data set. So I imported the Nashville's art map. Next thing I want to import is, I would start working with it is just Nashville's zip code, because what I'm trying to get at is based on the zip code, how many art locations exist in each zip code. So I'll start with the maps itself. So this is, again, I'm in Kibana. This is the +1 use case where you bring your data and you get creative with it, trying to solve the problems. So let me create a map. And once it loads this is just the Elastic's map service that is available out of the box. This is where what I want to start with is add a layer to this map. I also downloaded a data set that has the zip codes for Nashville. So once I import this, and it may not be visible, it's importing right now, add as a document layer. Let's start zooming in. So since it's a GeoJSON, it's essentially a polygon representation of the boundaries for Nashville and the different zip codes that fall within the Nashville. So this is a good starting point. Now I want to just make it a little bit more readable. So currently just filled with whatever is default. I want to lighten it up a little bit so I can still see what's behind. And since it's a zip code, maybe a better representation would be red, just how I perceive colors. So this gives me a zip code boundary for Nashville. The next thing, if you remember, I imported an art map data, and I can add that as another layer. So totally different data set. I'm just presenting all of this on top of one another on a map just to make it more accessible to whoever my end audience is. So I can go to Elasticsearch, since that's my data set, Nashville art map 2, I believe. And it has picked up the location field by default, because if you remember, it auto detected that as a geo point, and that's why I can see these here. So let me add this layer. I can do similar things. Like right now, it's just a marker. Since it's the art map location, I want to change this a little bit. And there is an art gallery. Symbol size could be a little better. And maybe I just want to change the color to something that shows up better on a green background. Yeah. So this is essentially a quick view into, I'm not leveraging any of the solution per se, but it's still helping me leverage my own data set that I onboarded, leveraging the CSVs that I got from the Nashville Open Data Project, and able to plot it, present it. And once this is done, my ability to search through it, it being a search platform, is super handy here. So, it's now right now looking at different things, and I can do things like, depending on what I am searching for. So type, these are the different type of arts that are available, and I can quickly search for mosaic types. And as you can see, it will go ahead and search for, try to find the data. And it seems like there are not many with the type mosaic. So this is just a quick overview of how you can leverage the data in Elastic, whether even if it's not tying into one of those solution areas that you have. So that's one use case. Quickly, if I wanted to just complete another one, just to show the machine learning component, since that was something that I brought up and I just passed over it. So I can import another data set that I downloaded. It's another Nashville data set, and it's for the building permit applications. So it will import once I'm done importing. I can building. So I can go back and see this in Discover, as I was mentioning earlier. So this is, it has a timestamp associated with it. And that's why you see it looks a little different, because it's tracking over time how many building permits were applied for and issued. This is where I can just start looking at things like which cities most of the permits were assigned, and I can start visualizing it right from Discover. I can change how I want to present it. There's just the different permits as they've been issued. This is just giving a percentage. I can change it to a line. This is just a bar chart, but then leveraging Kibana and the lens capabilities that it has, I can change it to a presentation that works better for me, or if I want to present it in a specific way. I can change it to lines and different visualizations that are available here. What I'm interested in, though, is leveraging the machine learning to identify if there are any anomalies in this data, which essentially means this data is capturing how many building permits get issued. And I want to understand over time if there is any abnormal behavior on the building permits that are being issued. I can create a new job. So this is the data that I just imported, building permits. I want to create a multi-metric machine learning job, which would be, I want to find anomalies, but then I also want to know who's responsible for it within my data set. So this is what it looks like over time, and clearly nothing about the last year and a half has been normal. So it is understandable that once we are post 2020, there is a sudden rise in the number of building permits that have been issued. But what's also interesting is it didn't necessarily fall down too much within the 2020 timeframe, which was surprising for me. So I'm just looking at the count rate. That's what I want to observe, the anomalies. Next thing I want to know is based on the permit type. This is not a very helpful. Yeah, so this is more of a, I don't know if you've noticed over on the top, what I'm telling this machine learning job is I want to understand the abnormal behavior, but not just on all the permits. I want to understand on different type of permits that get issued. And that's what you're seeing here in these tiles. So this is just validation. It's telling me that everything looks fine. There is probably one thing it just says be watchful, just because the data is not that well spread out. Once this is done, I would just go ahead and create this job. You would notice as it starts analyzing this data, it would mark these different points in colors. If you remember the Edward service, it's essentially how abnormal it's finding something. And based on that, it's color tagging. The reason it changed its color over time, because the first time it saw something here, it said, oh, this looks abnormal, but it kept seeing it again and again and again. And eventually it just said, hey, this is my new normal. Maybe there is specific time of the month or the year where these many number of building permits, they do see a spike. But as you can see on the right-hand side, there are a lot of anomalies here. So if I go to the view results, just to understand this a little bit better, I would want to start with wherever the highest anomaly is. And as I click on this, this is just giving me multiple visualizations to understand. But what's more interesting to me is on the left-hand side, if you see the influencers, for whatever reason, there are a lot of building permits that were just recently issued for building residential, and these are the three categories. The addition seems to be the biggest one that's contributing most. That's what the 99 here says. And permit type, I wish I knew more about them, but it's just the type of permit that was issued, which is causing. I could have added multiple metrics that I wanted to correlate. This is just a quick example of how someone like me who's not, I wouldn't necessarily call myself good at machine learning, or definitely not even close to a data scientist, but even myself can leverage the out-of-the-box capability. And just because it's more intuitive and driven towards what I as an analyst is trying to find, I can leverage this and employ it and learn from the data over time. So what we saw in the logs and security, it's essentially the same machine learning platform that has been applied out of the box, and you just see the value. For a lot of your data use cases where you're just trying to get your data on board and leverage the machine learning capabilities, this was a very simplistic example of how you can do it. Are there any questions, Faith?
Nope, there are not any questions right now.
Perfect. Yeah, so that's pretty much what I had that I wanted to go through from a demo to take this to a closure. I just wanted to highlight the point. So the demo that we saw, obviously native integration is what we wanted to talk about. That doesn't mean it's the only way to do it. Like someone mentioned Kubernetes-based deployment. You can always take your ELK deployment from self-managed Kubernetes to maybe to AKS, or maybe Kubernetes managed on just Azure infrastructure. So I wanted to complete that picture to make sure that you know that there are options. So the service that I showed you, the native integrated service that gets deployed in Elastic's Azure tenant, a lot of the times you want the flexibility and control to have it within your tenant. And even though the service gets deployed in Elastic tenant, there is private link ability with Azure that we announced last week. So it's not that it's insecure, it's just that sometimes the compliance, the regions that you want to be in drive you towards a more self-managed. So this is where I just wanted to highlight that there are multiple options available irrespective of how you want to deploy. There is an option backed by Microsoft and an Elastic partnership that supports you in similar ways. And that's pretty much what I had. I know Randy has been generous to offer this Starbucks gift card. I don't know, Randy, if there are more details to it, but this is the link where you can go and claim it.
Right, and I put the link into chat, so you can just click on that. And I know some of you have claimed it, some of you haven't. But now's the opportunity to get that $10 Starbucks voucher. And thank you everyone for attending and staying through the demo.
And I also want to thank you for a great presentation, an extremely interesting product, one that I have to admit I wasn't aware had such richness. So I want to thank you for presenting, and also thank Randy. And Faith for, for monitoring the chat.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Really good. Any last minute questions or anything else that anybody wants to talk about? All right. If you, by the way, if you want to let us know when you're having another meeting of your user group, I'll pass it on to the group. Okay.
Yeah, that would be great.
So
I'm happy to
let
do
us
that.
know. Yeah, we also have a in Meetup. We have a discussion forum. You can post it there if you want, or just send it to me and I'll tell them. Okay.
Yeah, will do. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you very much, everyone, and we'll see you next month.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay.